This is the fourth time additional buyer's stamp duty rates have been raised since the measure's introduction more than a decade ago. In a sign of the times, two of the hikes were made in the last year and a half. Now, ABSD was first rolled out in 2011. It largely targeted foreigners and corporate entities with a 10% tax to buy any residential property. The aim then was to moderate demand and keep property prices affordable for locals. But this had minimal impact. The rates were revised a little over a year later. Foreign buyers now had to cough up 15% for any purchase. And for the first time, Singaporeans had to pay the duty to buy a second home. Prices started falling in the third quarter, declining for 9 straight quarters. And the next increase, that came in 2018 on a sharp spike on property prices. The duty went up to 25% for foreigners buying any property and up by 5% for Singaporeans and PRs buying additional homes. And prices, well, they fell for a while before rising steeply during the pandemic. And to curb soaring prices, the government rolled out 3 rounds of cooling measures in the span of 16 months. This included raising the ABSD rates twice. The 2021 increase, that placed a higher duty of 30% on foreigners. But the hot private residential market, it continued to heat up nonetheless, prompting this latest increase. Now, for more, we are joined by Chia Siew Chuin, Head of Residential Research at JLL, as well as Sumit Agarwal from the NUS Business School, and he's also Head of the Department of Real Estate. Good evening to both of you. First off, a question to you, Ms. Chan. The measures, they seem to affect the wealthy foreigners who perhaps want to buy very expensive homes that are maybe out of reach for other people. So how will the latest moves help Singaporeans in terms of those house prices? Hello, Ms. Chan, can you hear me? I'm throwing a question to you. It's Dawn here. Talk to us about how these latest... Hi, yes. Talk to us about how these latest this move with the ABSD is actually going to help people buy homes or help them with the prices of their homes, specifically because it seems to target people who might want to buy more expensive properties, and typically that may be from a foreigner.
Yes, the latest round of ABSD increase typically targets the foreign buying demand as well as foreign investment demand. So this set of measures is very punitive to these group of buyers and investors. So we do feel that there is going to be kind of a effect on the eventual demand on this high-end properties. However, we think that because the makeup of these foreign buyers and foreign investors in Singapore form about 6.9% of all total non-landed sales in Singapore, and that has actually increased, no doubt, from the year before, from 3.1% to 6.9% this year, as in first quarter of this year. But it still forms a pretty small percentage out of the total sale of all properties in Singapore. So while we think that investment as well as buying demand by foreigners would actually cool off, it's not going to have very severe impact on the entire market per se. And this additional buyer stamp duty also do not affect local buyers at large, because most of the local buyers at large, especially the first-time buyers, are going to be left unscarred. So we do not think that local buyers as well as upgraders are going to be impacted by much.
Professor Sumit, picking up on what Ms. Chia said there, she says this will not affect local buyers at large. In fact, there's good argument this may not affect people past a period of time. I mean, Dawn was just talking about how we've had this 4 times additional buyer's stamp duty. Those rates have been raised 4 times since 2011. And each time is because, I suppose, prices adjusted. People adjusted to raise rates. Do you see this new raise as having an effect that will last beyond just a few months?
I agree. I mean, look, the composition of the buyers are very few percent are foreign buyers. Around 15% are PRs, and vast majority, around 80%, are actually Singaporeans, which are mostly first-time buyers or upgraders from HDB to private condos. So essentially, these measures will have very little effect on house prices per se. They may have some cooling off effect, but it's very hard to determine from the data, was it the policy or something else, maybe macroeconomic conditions, inflation, who knows, that actually reduced the price growth. Right now, the way the policy is implemented, ABSD policy, we cannot actually decipher those at all.
Ms. Chia, both you and Professor Sumit, you both seem to agree that this move, this latest cooling measure, is not going to have very much effect on the impact on prices of other types of properties. Is there a scenario, though, any scenario at all, where you might see it would affect resale flat prices?
For resale flat prices, in the first instance, we need to understand that the resale flats market would probably see some form of filtered demand from the private residential market. If in the instance whereby we see that a large amount or a large base of buyers in the private residential market would have been affected by this latest revision. And therefore, some numbers of buyers would probably channel their demand into the public resale market. However, as by and large, most buyers in the private market would not have been affected by the ABSD, because first-time buyers are not affected at all, because there's no ABSD imposed on them for their house purchase first time round. And therefore, we do not foresee that there is going to be a huge number of buyers channeling their demand or needs into the private or into the public market. And hence, if there's any impact on public flats prices at all, it's going to be very marginal.
All right, Professor Sumit, the effect of all this on rental prices, now, it could actually go either way. Rentals could come down because more Singaporeans can now afford, in principle, cheaper homes, so they don't need to rent. But you could also argue foreigners cannot afford to buy now and will therefore have to need to rent. And that could cause rental prices to go up. Would it be fair to ask you to predict what might happen on rental prices?
As an economist, I could say one hand, the other hand. So I think what will happen is that actually the rental market for HDBs is likely to come back because of the supply side issues that the minister also discussed. But the rental prices for the private condos is likely to actually go up because of the demand side issues, which means foreigners cannot now own a property. On the margin, they actually have more money because they were saving up for the 30% ABSD. But now they realize they can't buy it, so they have this extra surplus. They will actually now bid higher to rent apartments, the private condos, and so they will bid up the rentals for private condos.
All right, thank you to both of you for talking to us this evening. We've been speaking there to Chia Siew Chuin from JLL and Professor Sumit Agarwal from NUS. Thank you both.